What is the most emotionally impactful Disney movie scene? What is the most emotionally impactful Disney movie scene? We're going to vote on that today. What's up, Story Geeks? It's Jay Shear, author of the time travel novel Time Slingers and co-host of the Story Geeks podcast and host on the live show today. So Disney and Pixar do an amazing job of giving us all the feels with their animated films. But which scene is the most emotionally impactful in the history of Disney and Pixar movies? That is what we're going to try and figure out today with our bracket challenge. We used to do these a while back, haven't done one in a long time, but we're coming back with a bracket challenge today, which means that you have to help us figure it out by putting in your votes. But before we get there, I actually want to cover the important question when we look at these emotional scenes, and that is, what makes a scene emotional? By the way, if there's any technological problems or anything that you can find, if the sound isn't working very well or whatever, just let me know in the comments. I'm going to be getting to your comments in just a minute. But before we dive into this bracket challenge, my question to you guys is, what makes a scene emotional? So if you are in the comments right now, let me know what you think. What makes a scene emotional? What makes a scene, how do we feel when a scene comes on that makes us emotional? Let's try and figure that out. Let me make sure, I'm going to make sure really quick too that the sound is coming through. If you are watching now, let me know if you can hear me well, because I'm using a different speaker system. I didn't want the big mic in front of my face because I didn't want to cover up this thing. If you can hear me, say something in the chat. If you can't hear me, say something in the chat. We'll try and figure it out. I'm going to try just to make sure. I don't know where my controls are on this thing, actually. All right. I know that some people are popping in and out to be able to watch. Can you hear me? It doesn't look like it's picking up my audio very well, even though it was earlier when I tested it. So if you can hear me or you can't hear me, let me know in the comments. Okay, perfect. Jessica can hear me? Awesome. So before we get into the actual bracket challenge, which we're going to get to in a minute, and then we're going to need to have you vote for the bracket for the most emotional scenes listed here. We'll get into that in a minute. What makes a scene emotional? We just yesterday did our Inside Out, our dig deeper into Inside Out, and that gave us 5 emotions that we feel. It gave us disgust, joy, sadness, anger, and fear. Disgust, joy, sadness, anger, and fear. So what about these scenes that we're going to cover today, these emotionally impactful Disney movie scenes? What about them makes us feel those emotions, those 5 emotions, or any other emotions that we feel when we watch movies? What is it that makes us feel those things in those scenes? I would like to hear your comments down below about what you think you feel when you see these scenes and what's prompting that in you. And I'm going to give you some of my thoughts too before we jump into the bracket challenge. The first thing I think is that we feel those things when we have had a similar or a shared experience as to what the characters are going through. If we've been there, then we realize those real emotions in ourselves, right? If we can replicate, for example, the marriage memories from Up, right? Very emotional scene. If we can feel that way about our spouse as the character is feeling on screen, or maybe it's not our spouse, maybe it's someone else that was close to us that we had a really close relationship to, then that can make us feel those same emotions because we felt them before, and it's easy for us to revisit those emotional scenes, those emotions themselves. We can also empathize or sympathize with what we're seeing someone else experience on screen. So maybe we haven't experienced these emotions before. Maybe these emotions are new to us. For example, you might even say, like, whether it's this magic carpet ride emotion that Aladdin and Jasmine are experiencing. Maybe you haven't felt that kind of love before in your life, but you can experience it through them by empathizing and sympathizing with them. And that is really what comes down to the actors and the animators being so important to visual storytelling, because they're what's going to get us really wrapped into this experience that we're having on screen. They're a conduit for us to get into that emotional space. And obviously in these movies, these characters become really, really, really important. So that's what I think makes a scene emotional. But what is it? What makes an emotional scene impactful? Because you can have an emotional scene where you're like, okay, that's a good emotional scene, but what makes it impactful? And I'm going to pause really quick because Jessica says music helps her feel what the creators want me to feel. Exactly. So you have multiple things that you can play upon as a filmmaker to make us feel. One is the way that the characters interact with what they're experiencing. Another is the feeling that we get when we listen to music. Another is what we see on screen, how that's happening, how colors change. You'll notice that a lot of movies have a color palette to them. Why is that? Because those color palettes affect our emotions. So yeah, the music is a really important one, and so are the actors, and so is the tone, and so is all of the things that are going on, for sure. But what makes an emotional scene impactful? What do you think makes an emotional scene impactful? I have a couple things that I think make emotional scenes impactful. The first is that they can help us empathize with a specific character, which then helps us feel something about that character. We go, I can now experience the world through their eyes or through their what they're experiencing, and now I empathize with them, and now I care more about them. In fact, we've seen this a lot lately because we've seen people getting pretty nervous and anxious about what the Joker movie is going to be about, because maybe we actually don't want to empathize with the Joker. Maybe empathizing with the Joker would be a really negative thing. So that's something that you can always kind of play with in your storytelling, is how are we supposed to empathize with someone, and then how can we also like take that empathy away if we go, yeah, we're empathizing with this person's backstory, but their behavior isn't good, so we don't really want to show a correlation between how we feel about them and then how we feel about their behavior all the time. So always some things you can play with as a storyteller to kind of deal with these characters. The other thing I'll say is that emotionally impactful scenes can put us in a very vulnerable place. So that opens us up to new perspectives and new experiences, right? If we start to become vulnerable, we are now watching something and we're opening ourselves up to different ways of thinking about it. If we don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we'll never change our mind about things. We will never be exposed to new things that make us think differently about the world. So this is why emotion is so important to storytelling. Stories impact our understanding and our interpretation of the world, and emotions allow us to open ourselves up to that specific experience. So I want to go into that because as we start to talk about which scenes we're going to vote in, and depending on how many people we have voting in the chat, you may just hear me and giving my personal opinions about this. That's what I think is both emotional and impactful to the story, and therefore impactful to us. That's what makes a scene emotional, our ability to share an experience with the characters or empathize with them, and then that opening us up to be more vulnerable, to be able to understand and interpret the world differently based on what we're experiencing in the actual story. So with that being said, we're going to move on into the bracket challenge. I'm going to give you my winners. You can vote in the chat for what you think should win. And as we go along, I'll announce each one and you can vote. Maybe you're not watching this live. Maybe you're watching this after this is already aired. If you are, I still want to hear your opinion. So put those down in the comments below. What do you think should have won in each of the different brackets that we are going to assess today? So let's start to vote and we'll get right into it. Starting with, so I'm going to read these off so that you'll know exactly what we have to vote on and what we're going up against. I'm just going to give you the top 4 choices based on our Facebook group's voting. Here are the top 4 choices based on Facebook. Marriage Memories from Up. That's obviously a super emotionally impactful scene. It does a lot to help us empathize for the lead character in that case. The other number 1 seed that we have is Miguel Sings to Mama Coco. Very impactful. Actually has a lot to do with not only how we feel about those characters, but also has to do with the plot itself and revelations that come through the plot. Mufasa's death is another number 1 seed. How can you watch that scene without being really emotionally in that place? Because why? Because we're experiencing this activity, this tragedy through Simba's eyes, and now we're really rooting for Simba to overcome this thing that has happened to him. And then finally, the last number 1 seed is Bing Bong being forgotten. So those were the 4 most voted upon things. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to win in this bracket challenge, because it kind of depends on how we vote, how all of us vote. So let's go through these. Our number 1 seed, Marriage Memories from Up, is going up against The Magic Carpet Ride from Aladdin. Now, these are 2 very distinctive types of emotions that we are going to feel, you'll notice, but they're kind of actually around the same root emotion. Or I should say they're both around the sense that we're supposed to love, right? So if we look at The Marriage Memories from Up, what is it supposed to tell us about the world? We love people that we have deep intimacy with. That's really important for that one. And then, of course, for this one, for The Magic Carpet Ride, that's like a new emotion that they're experiencing. So it's kind of almost the opposite end of the spectrum. This is somebody meeting another person for the first time with The Magic Carpet Ride with Aladdin and Jasmine. And this is a whole marriage that has occurred over time that people are really invested in. So what do you think? Should Marriage Memories from Up or should The Magic Carpet Ride from Aladdin win? Let us know in the comments. Personally speaking, I think this one's kind of easy. While Magic Carpet Ride is a fun scene, let's face it, Marriage Memories from Up is the most critical of all. And Jessica actually voted for that as well. So we're going to move Marriage Memories from Up. Just so you guys know, I'm just going to put MM to save time. We'll put Up here. That's going to move on against the Aladdin Magic Carpet Ride. The number 2 seed in this part of the bracket is going up against the number 3 seed. The number 2 seed is Dumbo's mom rocking him in her trunk. Now, this is obviously a scene where 2 characters are both experiencing a lot of tragedy. And in that tragedy, there's someone comforting someone else. And a mother comforting a child is obviously a very emotional scene for us. We see that occur a lot in our daily lives. We've even experienced that ourselves. A lot of us have experienced that ourselves. And that's going up against the number 3 seed, which is the restoring of Te Fiti. Basically, the culmination of the film Moana, where Te Fiti has turned into this dark character and is turning back into this really lush, giving character. So what do you think? Do you think Dumbo's mom rocking him or the restoring of Te Fiti should win in this case? I'm going to give you a pretty controversial choice on this one from me personally. I know a lot of people are going to want me to vote for Moana. Jessica votes for Dumbo and Mom. And that's what I'm going to vote for too. And I'll tell you, I think that the redemption is really strong in restoring Te Fiti. It's a really strong redemptive type of arc that we feel. But I think that the root emotion of Dumbo's mom rocking him is something that almost everybody can identify with. And so we're going to be going with Dumbo on this one. That's what's going to be moving through. If you can't stand that or you think that's the worst choice of all time, let us know in the comments down below. Now we're going to get down to this other section of the bracket. We have 2 choices here. The number 1 seed is Miguel singing to Mama Coco. Clearly a very emotional scene. If you don't choke up at that, I don't know what's going on in your life. And then also the number 4, the Lady and the Tramp sharing spaghetti, the spaghetti noodle. So you have, again, this is similar to what we talked about with the Magic Carpet Ride from Aladdin, in that Lady and the Tramp, we're sharing this new emotion of starting to care for another person that's just entered our lives. So it's very much of a love scene for us. And then also the Miguel singing to Coco is this sense of legacy, in this sense that this thing that has been very meaningful to him and this song that has been very meaningful to him, he's turning back to his grandmother. Jessica notes here that the song in the Dumbo scene also kills her. Of course, yeah. See, this is, again, they're using music, like Jessica mentioned earlier. They're using music to drive this emotion home. So what do you think? Miguel singing to Mama Coco or the spaghetti share? I know Josh Taylor from Network 1901 a Disney expert, just said to us the other day that the spaghetti scene is one of the best scenes in film history. Jessica says Singing to Mama Coco. I am also going to go with Singing to Mama Coco. The spaghetti scene is a really great. I think it's actually better than the Magic Carpet Ride. That's why it's a higher seed. Well, actually, they're the same seed. But I think the spaghetti scene should have been a much higher seed because it's a fantastic scene. But if we're talking about emotions, a lot of times sadness and tragedy make us feel more so than even like the excitement of a new kind of love would make us feel, especially as an audience group. So we're going to go with Coco on this one. Coco singing to Miguel singing to Mama Coco moves through. The next one is our number 2 seed and number 3 seed here in this bracket is the Seven Dwarves mourning what happens to Snow White versus Bambi's mom dying. The number 2 is the Seven Dwarfs. I don't know how that got a higher vote than Bambi's mom dying because Disney uses this all the time. Bambi's mom dying is sort of like one of the most tragic scenes I think I've ever seen. So I'm going to go with Bambi's mom dying on this one. The Seven Dwarves mourning Snow White. I'll tell you what's really great about that scene is that they capture the emotions of the dwarves, each one of the dwarves, really, really well in that scene, in that animation. It's a brilliant animated moment. But I'm going to go with Bambi's mom dying because that I still remember vividly, and I don't even barely remember the rest of the movie Bambi. So I'm going to go with that. Jessica goes with Bambi's mom dying as well. She also says that she loves the spaghetti scene so much, and that was a tough call. It was a tough call. It was a really tough call. Everybody who voted in the Facebook group did not give us easy choices, and that's a good thing. So now we're going to move over to the other side of the bracket. We have in the number 1 seed, Mufasa's death going up against Andy Goes to College, which barely made it on there, actually. Sandra Demas added that one. A really important scene in terms of moving that franchise forward. I'm going to say, though, that Mufasa's death is definitely the one that I would go for in this one. What did you guys go for? Jessica says Mufasa's death. We're going to go with Lion King on this one and go with Mufasa. Again, this is super tragic. This is legacy moving on to the next generation. Different emotions that we feel for those things. But death is a very powerful thing in our lives that elicits a lot of emotion, and that's very true here with Mufasa's death as well. So now we're going to get down to Sully finding the last piece to Boo's door versus Vanellope dropping the medal. These are voted on by you guys. Vanellope dropping the medal in Wreck-It Ralph 2. Now, I have something to admit to you guys. I have not actually seen Wreck-It Ralph 2. I know that's terrible. I know it's on Netflix. I should have watched it already. I have not watched it. So I have to go with Sully on this one. So I'm going to vote for Sully finding Boo's door, the last piece of Boo's door. And that's a really special relationship. And the reason that that's built up emotion for us is because Sully and Boo and Mike Wazowski have developed such a strong connection. And they have, it's one of these scenes where, it reminds me of something like the story of the Good Samaritan, where these two groups of people are not supposed to get along. This is like, a lot of the X-Men movies are based on these things. These people are not supposed to get along, but they find common ground through this experience that they have and this empathy that they have towards someone that's not like them. And each one thinks the other one is really dangerous, right? Humans think that monsters are really dangerous, and monsters think that humans are really dangerous. And so that's a really cool story. It's really cool. And I don't know exactly how Vanellope dropping that medal, because I haven't seen the film. I don't know the impact of that. So let me know in the comments, what makes that scene so emotionally impactful for you? And which one would you have chosen? Jessica also noted over here that Simba is blamed for Mufasa's death, which adds to the tragedy. And that is so true, because a lot of times we go through a lot of guilt when someone around us passes away. How was our relationship with them throughout their life? What are all the hurts we caused them? We can sometimes think about that. And so that death, even though it's tragic and we're mourning somebody, we almost also might have a guilt emotion associated with that as well, which is really fascinating. Let's get down to this last bracket so we can get down to our final 8 and then get down to our final 4. Or actually, I should say our final 4 after this. Bing Bong Forgotten really, really emotional scene from Inside Out. We just talked about Inside Out on the main show, so we talked about that scene a lot. This is about a child forgetting someone, right? In this case, it's an imaginary character. But the way that imaginary character sacrifices himself for the other characters to move forward in the story is really heroic and really important to the rest of how that plot plays itself out. The other one on here at the number 4 seed is the incinerator scene from Toy Story 3. That is a terrifying scene. So we're kind of dealing with more of like a fear emotion here, and also this connection that the characters have as they're. What do we do when we experience fear? The best thing we can possibly do is be in community. So if you have a really strong community and you're fearful, you can go to them in fear. We see that a lot in movies when people are really, really, really fearful. So which one do you think? Do you think the Bing Bong Forgotten scene or the incinerator scene should move forward? Which one would you vote for? This is going to be a shocking one for me. Jessica says tie for her. These are both really powerful scenes. I'm kind of surprised the incinerator scene was not a higher seed, because honestly speaking, these should both be moving through at this point in time. But this is the way that this shaked out. I'm going to vote for the incinerator scene. I'm going to vote for Toy Story, because in this case, I think that the fear we experience when something bad is happening in our lives and the connection we can have with friends who are intimate with us is really, really great. So I'm going to choose the incinerator scene from Toy Story 3, and we'll move down to this next part where we're going up against the number 2 seed, WALL-E and Eve dancing. Beautiful scene. There's some joy in it. There's some sadness in it, mostly joy. But they're connecting through that scene, which is really awesome. I'm really surprised at you guys, because you put that scene way far and above the Belle and Beast dancing scene, which this is as powerful as that scene is. I'm not criticizing anybody, but the Belle and the Beast scene is so classic and iconic. It's pretty surprising. The WALL-E and Eve dance scene is going to go up against Woody rescuing the toys from Toy Story 1. So these are the broken toys. These are toys that need someone to help save them. They need a hero. And then Woody steps up, and we get this surge of emotion. We get pride, we get excited when Woody steps in to rescue those folks. So what do you think? Woody rescuing the toys or WALL-E and Eve dancing? Which one made you feel more emotions? And which one was actually more important and impactful to the story? That's also part of this, right? It's more important and impactful to what's going on in the story itself. I'm going to vote, Jessica's going to vote for rescuing toys. I personally am actually going to go with the WALL-E and Eve dancing, because I think that WALL-E and Eve is a really critical point, because we have seen WALL-E. It's really imperative to his character. We've already seen Woody be a hero in multiple instances. It's not as impactful to that movie as the WALL-E and Eve dancing is, because WALL-E was such a lonely character, and he was looking for any sign of life and any sign of connectivity. And finally he gets to dance with Eve. He finds Eve, they get to dance. They have a rocky relationship over time, but finally get to dance. I'm going to put that one up there because of that specifically. But let me know what you think in the comments. Up here with Marriage Memories from Up versus Dumbo. This is Dumbo's mom rocking him. I'm just going to put it out there. It's going to be really hard for me not to choose the Marriage Memories to win it all. We're going to see what it goes up against. But obviously this is really, really important. A mother's love for their child is really critical. But I think that a lifelong relationship between spouses is a pretty special thing. So you have to let me know. Do you think this is a more special scene and a more impactful scene, or is this one? I also like this scene from Up because it sets up the main character really well. It makes us empathize with the main character in a really powerful way. So I'm going to move the Marriage Memories scene from Up forward for this bracket, and that is going to be one of our final 4. Down here we have Miguel singing to Mama Coco versus Bambi's mom dying. Oh man, this is a tough one. What do you guys think? What do you guys think between Coco, Miguel singing to Mama Coco versus Bambi's mom dying. That's a tough one because Bambi's mom dying is, like I said, I still remember that. I still remember that. Coco, I can still picture that scene in my mind. I also think that in Coco, I struggle a little bit with that film because it's called Coco, but it's really more about Miguel and Miguel's character journey. So that's an interesting one for me. I'm not quite sure. Jessica's voting for Bambi's mom. I will go with that as well. We'll go with Bambi's mom on that one for being one of the most classic Disney scenes that sets up the death of Disney parents for so many more movies to come. So that's going to be really good. Up here we have Mufasa's death versus Sully finding the last piece of Boo's door. I think because of the complexity, like Jessica referenced earlier, because of the complexity in that scene for what it does to Simba's character, what it does for the characters in Pride Rock, because obviously Scar is going to go on to being the ruling lion in that case. I think that one's actually stronger than Sully. Although I will say that the importance of Sully and Boo interacting and developing a connection, even though they really shouldn't develop a connection together, like we talked about earlier, I think it's really cool. But I'm still going to go with Mufasa. Let's see what everybody else says. Jessica says Mufasa's death, and she says, "I guess I have issues with parents dying." Who doesn't? Who doesn't have that? So we're going to go with Mufasa's death up here. From The Lion King. That's going to be tough. That's a really, really powerful emotional scene. Which brings us to this last bracket before we go into our final four. Our last bracket is Toy Story, the incinerator scene, versus Wall-E and Eve in Wall-E. Now, what's interesting about this is we've passed through 3 of the 4 scenes right now, and all of those had to deal with death in some way, shape, or form. You'll notice that Wall-E does not deal with that in this case. Wall-E is dealing with a more uplifting emotional scene where Wall-E and Eve are dancing together. The Toy Story scene, however, it's somewhat uplifting because we know how that turned out, but it's also really terrifying because of the scene as it plays out. So which one is we're going to pass through? We're going to go kind of a little bit darker, or we're going to go a little bit lighter with Wall-E and Eve. Jessica votes for the incinerator scene and also mentioned that Disney movies are often watched by kids, so parents dying is especially scary for kids. That is incredibly true. So, oh man, I really want to choose Wall-E, but that Toy Story scene is one of the best scenes that I think we've ever seen in a Disney movie. Like Josh Taylor said about the spaghetti scene in the shared spaghetti scene from Lady and the Tramp, that Toy Story incinerator scene is so iconic. So iconic. All right, so now it looks like these two are going to go up against each other, but that's actually not accurate. We're going to go down these two versus these two. So now we have the marriage moments from Up versus one of the most classic scenes that we've talked about, Bambi's mom dying. So what do you think? Bambi's mom dying or this marriage memories from Up? This is Bambi's mom dying is one of the most classic Disney scenes in film history, but marriage memories is almost unbeatable. I don't know if there's another. This is one of the best. I think that this scene, the marriage memories scene from Up, is perhaps the most emotionally impactful scene that I have ever seen in any movie, period. So come at me about that. But I think that that's really fantastic. So I'm going to move that one ahead. Jessica also votes for marriage memories, so that's good. We have marriage memories showing up from Up. That's going to go head-to-head against something from this bracket to define our winner. Mufasa and Mufasa's death versus Toy Story and the incinerator scene. What do you guys think about this? Bambi's mom dying and marriage memories from Up both do the same thing for us. They take this character's experience, a really emotional experience. Bambi's mom dying is a super emotional experience. The marriage memories from Up, I think Carl is the name of the guy, right? Carl from Up. He experiences this very emotional thing of having to part ways with the spouse. So basically, those emotional scenes are used in an impactful way for us to empathize with those characters. Carl, Jessica, and Mary both say Carl, and then Ellie is the other name of the other character, which is great. Great pickup. Toy Story, the incinerator scene, and Mufasa's scene are slightly different, actually, because Mufasa's scene does give us empathy for Simba, but it also drives the it does more for the story than that, because it actually drives us into really disliking the character of Scar. So it has kind of a two-pronged approach, whereas these scenes, obviously we don't like the hunter in Bambi, but that's not as impactful, I don't think, in the whole movie that surrounds Bambi. But this Mufasa scene is, I mean, pretty killer for driving the entire story forward and making that a very impactful moment. The Toy Story scene is, I think, not as broadly felt. So what do you think? Mufasa's death or Toy Story incinerator scene? Jessica goes incinerator scene. What should I go with? I think the Toy Story incinerator scene is a better scene. But as it relates to the overall impact on the movie, I'm going to go with Mufasa's death. And that's the final two we're going to come down to. This versus we have right here is the marriage memories scene from Up versus Mufasa's death. What do you guys think? Mary said she sobbed in the Toy Story movie, and that's very fair. I feel like that scene, when you see the emotions on the faces of the characters that are headed towards the incinerator, it is terrifying. It is terrifying. It's really hard not to feel for the characters going through that thing. What do you guys think? Marriage memories from Up or Mufasa's death? Which one is the more emotionally impactful scene and matters more to the impact that it has on the story overall with us? Jessica says her biggest fear is burning alive. So the incinerator, yeah, that would make sense. I'll tell you that I think that as it comes down to this last one, Mary votes for marriage memories. Haven't gotten Jessica's vote yet. You guys should be voting in the comments to let us know how you would have filled out this bracket. As a little bit of history here, Marriage Memories has beaten the Magic Carpet Ride from Aladdin. Marriage Memories has beaten the Dumbo's mom rocking him. It beat out Bambi as well, and Bambi's mom dying, one of the most classic scenes of all time. Up here in this bracket, Mufasa's death beat Andy going to college and giving his toys over to Bonnie. It also beat Sully finding the last piece of Boo's door. And it also beat the Toy Story incinerator scenes. These are two scenes that have come a long way. I am going to vote, because of the artfulness of this scene, we are going to move the marriage memories scene from Up into the winning bracket. And this is our final winner, Marriage Memories. I will tell you that, again, I'll repeat this again. I think that the Marriage Memories retrospective for Up is one of the most powerful scenes I've ever actually witnessed in film. I do have one complaint, and this is, if you thought that Mufasa's death should have won in place of Marriage Memories, here's one valid complaint about this scene from Up. It's the best scene in Up. Up does not ever live up, no pun intended. Up does not ever live up to the rest of that, to that scene. That scene was so powerful that the rest of the film can't live up to it. Let's see what Mary and Jessica have to say. Mary says, I've seen all of these films, and Disney films have always had touching moments, but it wasn't until Up and Inside Out that some of the more recent ones that they really started making us cry. I mean, Pixar kills it. Pixar understands storytelling so well. They're really amazing. So Jessica says the movie doesn't do nearly as much with the marriage memories as Lion King does with Mufasa's death, and that's what I was referring to. She beat me to the punch on that because I think her comment was before I even said it. That's very true. She says it almost set the bar too high for Up to get back there, and that's very true. It's really hard if you have a great beginning of your film to live up to that great beginning throughout the entire 90 minutes of that film. From a storytelling perspective, Mufasa's death scene is more important. I agree with that. But we're still going to move Marriage Memories forward. So now I want to hear your bracket. Is there a scene that you would have said should have been in there? Is there a scene, based on what I talked about in the beginning of this video, with emotions and then the impact of those emotions to storytelling? Do you think that there should have been a different scene that made it in there? I will say we don't see a lot of redemption in this bracket. We see a lot of tragedy in this bracket. Why is that? Why do you guys think that is? Leave me a comment down below and let me know. But as for now, that is it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Thanks for sticking with me. I know I was checking on the audio problems. It sounds like we did not have any audio problems and we were good to go. You can hear the air conditioner though, because it is so hot in Southern California today that got to go with the AC unit, and I'm using not as great of a microphone. But thanks for watching. If you like today's video, hit the like button. Make sure you hit that like button. Click the subscribe button for more geek discussions just like this one. And finally, as we always say to close out every show, question everything in your favorite geek stories, even how they're emotionally manipulating you, perhaps, and always seek the truth. Special thanks to Jessica and Mary for hanging out with me on this live show. If you're watching post-live show, let me know in the comments down below. I'll come back and check into it to interact with you around what you think some of the more emotionally impactful scenes are from your favorite animated Disney and Pixar films. This really is going to close out. Next week is the last episode of our Disney series on the main podcast channel. Be sure to check that out. It's a really fun nerd fight and it's really a fun nerd fight about which live action Disney movie remake was the best. You gotta check that out. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you later. Bye.